welcome back, E-Town. Scott Bramley here again with another edition of the Remote Learning Rundown. This week, I am joined by several guests to talk about our new in-person experiences, which will be starting next week. Today's guests are Nicole Boyd from Student Activities in the Student Success Center, David Chan from our IIT Department, Instructional Technology, Nick Gale from the Fine Arts Department, and Dr. Kiwana Brown from our Academic Supports Department. I want to thank them all for taking the time today to talk to us about our in-person experiences.
All right, welcome back, E-Town. Scott Bramley here with the latest edition of the Remote Learning Rundown. I'm joined by a panel of guests today who are going to help us all make a little more meaning and some sense of the in-person experiences. If we're thinking about offering one, or we've heard about these in-person experiences, but we don't quite know what they are, they're going to help us with that information. And so I'm going to ask them all to introduce themselves first, and then we'll get started with a little bit of question and answer. I'll ask each panelist a question, they'll respond, and then at the end, I have some final thoughts on the building use and in-person experiences. So good morning to everybody on the call. For those of you who will be watching this later, they got up very early this morning to be here with me, so I really appreciate it. And if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourselves to the audience, and we'll start with you, Nicole.
Good morning. I'm Nicole Boyd, the Director of Student Activities and the Student Success Center, AKA The Hub.
Good morning, everyone. My name is David Chan. I'm the Director of Instructional Technology.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Nick Gale from the Fine Arts Department.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Kiwana Brown. I'm the Director of Academic Supports.
Awesome. Well, thank you all again for being here. And there's been a lot of talk about these in-person experiences. Everyone's very excited. Hopefully I'll get this edited out by today. But if you don't see this today, hopefully by Tuesday when our in-person experiences start. So Nicole, I was wondering if you might help everybody understand a little bit about the why behind this, right? So we have these in-person experiences planned. We have a lot of kids who've already signed up actually already for different things. So it's very exciting. But if you could tell us a little bit of like, what is the vision or purpose for offering these? And then, like, how do you know that students will actually want to do this, right? Like, what was the process to kind of get here, why we're doing this, and then how do we know students will even want to do it?
Sure. So in terms of the why and the vision, we know that students are missing each other, missing staff, missing the building, missing so many things. So the in-person experiences is the district's response to the student and staff well-being. We just need some opportunities for connection. We need some opportunities for belonging and for students to reconnect with their peers and reconnect with the building. And really to help lift some spirits right now. This has been such a difficult time. And at the same time, it's important that we maintain the continuity of instruction. So to offer some non-curricular experiences for students to be able to enter the building safely and engage that way, we're really confident that that will help with some social emotional well-being. So that's the why. Remind me the second part of your question, Scott.
Oh yeah, thank you so much for that, by the way. I mean, the focus on well-being and the connectedness is just so important for us. So I really appreciate you emphasizing that. But the second part was just like, if that's the purpose, then how do we know students will even want to engage in these? And when you're talking about that, you might want to offer up a couple examples too, from just the process that you came to know that students would actually want to do these things.
Sure. I'll share my screen for a second. So we are, the student activities and community service staff are offering Monday Fun Day experiences in various locations in the building. We did get a lot of student input from our student ambassadors, thanks to Cindy Curtis and Allie Hart, and also our students and student council. So we certainly wanted to respond to what students wanted to see. And as this is what students see when they click on that Monday Fun Day link. So we've got activities, service and more fun activities scheduled out through the middle of May. And there's also an opportunity here for students to suggest any experiences. So students who we didn't reach for input in the first time around are welcome to offer suggestions, and we will really work hard to be responsive to what students want to do. Our experiences are voluntary, so students really are making the choice to come in. And if they choose to come in, we want to make sure that we're offering what it is that they would be willing to come in the building for.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Nicole. I really appreciate that overview. And help me remember, is that you just showed us that website that's available on the web, right? And that was sent out earlier this week?
Yeah, so the Google site went live on Wednesday, and I don't have that up on my screen yet, but
I think David might bring it up in a minute here.
Okay.
So I think he'll cover us, but it went live on Wednesday is what you were saying, right?
Yeah, and so this is just one of the 7 or 8 options on that site.
Okay, perfect, wonderful. Thank you so much, Nicole. David, going to transition to you now. So thinking about what we just heard, and I'm a staff member, I read through my email, I heard about this. Maybe I even watched the board meeting on Monday night or the recording of it, and I heard about these in-person experiences. But I don't sponsor a club or an activity, or maybe I'm not connected formally to Nicole's department and the experiences that she just mentioned. So, and I'm thinking about doing this. I'm thinking about hosting an experience. How would I go about doing that? What would be my process?
Yeah, absolutely. So we definitely wanted to make the process as simple as we could, but we have to all recognize that it's actually quite complex given the design and ramifications of what we're doing. Everything from building capacities to students be allowed on campus and understanding all of their needs that go on, again, behind the scenes. So I'll start with that site, though. It's a great segue. So this is the site that Nicole was referencing, the in-person experiences site that went live on Wednesday. There are 8 buttons here. And first of all, great job to Allie for helping design the buttons. And then everyone on this call and many others to really organize this entire experience and process overall. So as you can see, and this is student facing only. So it's restricted to ETHS 202 accounts. So staff can't see it, and we recommend you take a look and click around as well, but focus specifically to answer your question about the course specific opportunities. Okay, so that would be this button right here. The first step is really to think about designing that proposal. So if you're a teacher or a staff member, you have this idea that you want to bring students in on, the first step is to go through the simple proposal form. And really, it's a 1-pager. Okay, so we just are interested, again, what you're interested in proposing, who you are, when, where, and then who's your supervisor. Okay, so we want to go through that so that it gets a quick review, approval, goes to then Robbie's office to make sure that we have the space and the capacity and the reservations all included. And again, this is all, once the teacher, let's say, designs that form, this is all happening behind the scenes and out of their hands. We just need the teacher to focus on what they want to propose. And again, give us some details on that. Once it gets approved, again, and the reservations are made, it then automatically shows up on this site. This is, again, that button. When I click on course specific opportunities, it takes me to this page. So if teachers are interested in just looking at what's already been approved, these are all 22 events already been approved just in the past 2 days. And these are, again, teachers and staff members interested in bringing students back in. And these are the descriptions of that. So once you have an approved experience, though, it's important that we register the students. So again, we didn't want to oversee all of that. We want teachers to have that ability to handle the registration of their students. So whether it's using a Google form, which we have a template form or like a sign up genius, if you're familiar with that and you want to have students sign up for specific times and block those out because you know you can only limit each experience and day to a certain number of people, then the teachers have full control to set that up. All we need, though, are the ID numbers of the students that are coming in. And when this is important, because again, due to certain things we have to know and work out with students who may need transportation or may have certain IEPs or medical concerns, we need those IDs 3 school days in advance. And again, this will be conveyed repeatedly. We do have a form that you'll get when your experience is approved. We've already had teachers kind of collect those ID numbers. Again, very simple. When's your event taking place? Who you are, and a list of the ID numbers of students that are coming, or at least have indicated that they'll come for your experience. So that's it. Design, your pitch your proposal, gather your student IDs, and then when the time comes and you're doing your experience, there will be a process for taking attendance. And again, we'll share that information as we get closer to your actual experience.
Wonderful. Thank you, David. I think, the important piece there with the attendance, I mean, like when we have events in the building, we're always asking people to take attendance. This is very normal, right? You're going to host something in the building, you take attendance. We're asking you to do it digitally for sure, so that we can, have these additional pieces, contact tracing among them as well, if something were to happen where we were known that there was an exposure to COVID. So I think that's like the one slight difference in these times. But I had a couple follow-up questions, and I didn't prepare the follow-up questions for you, so you can handle them though. So it says course specific experiences on the button, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm a counselor, I'm a social worker, a staff member in the building who's not a teacher, and I want to offer one of these, but I'm also not a club activity sponsor. Is this where I go to? Is this for me too? Do I see myself here? I want to offer something, I can use this feature.
I think it certainly starts here. So if in doubt, I'd say go through that proposal form. Again, it's not a detailed form. And then, through the proposal process, and that's why we've always said like teacher sponsor in some of the language, because we know that it's not, we know there are plenty of staff members that may have interest in doing such a thing. So yeah, I would definitely start there. And if it feels like it belongs in a different place, because we've already had some that may qualify for like Monday Fun Day activities, then I'm assuming, or I think the proposal would get routed to Nicole or whoever is it would make a better fit for.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, David. And I think we're going to transition right now, but we might come back to some things. If I'm going to ask everyone if they have any final thoughts before we close up. So, but I do want to get to Nick, and we've talked about clubs and activities through the hub, and what was it, the Nicole, Director of Student Activities and the Student Success Center. Okay, so through there we've talked about classroom or staff inspired experiences through David, course specific experiences. And then Nick, we know that you work, you introduced yourself as from the Fine Arts Department. And so what are some of the experiences, the in-person experiences that are being offered or maybe being considered to be offered from the Fine Arts Department or from the co-curricular, extracurricular activities associated with fine arts? Do you have any thoughts on that so far? Or is there anything in the pipeline here for next week or beyond?
I do, yeah. Our teachers kind of have this blend of both in-classroom experiences. So we do have some teachers already who have proposed ideas for their classes. But then when we think about kind of our established groups already, like our music groups, our theater productions, dance as well, we're very much in the planning phase right now. I know our YAMO student board, who runs the show, writes the show, they've already been meeting the past couple weeks to start brainstorming how can we approach a show during this time. As you can imagine, it's difficult to act with masks on. So we're trying to problem solve around what are some different ways that we can continue that tradition, provide that experience for students and do it to the best of our ability. So I know we're looking to do YAMO for sure. We're talking about auditions in March. And like I said, the students are already in the planning process. So hopefully over time we get a better sense of like how we're going to execute that. And then how are we going to put that on as a performance? And hopefully that's something that the student body and the staff can all kind of engage in. Even when we're not a part of things directly, we can still support those things by being audience members. And one of the great benefits to all these virtual performances that we've done is I'll say it's easier to see the show when you're just from home and you can open up your computer, but it's also allowed people to be audience members from across the country. So we've actually gotten a bigger reach or a broader reach through our virtual performances. So we're likely going to head that direction again. And the reason is that way, if something does happen with COVID, we are at least still prepared. There was one of our local schools in the regions back in March who their school shut down the night they were supposed to perform their musical. So they had gone months of rehearsing and preparing and then not even being able to perform it. And that's certainly not what we would want for our students. Not that they could control that, but so yeah, so we got YAMO in the works. Our music department is currently surveying students to find out who and which students are interested in coming into the building for in-person experiences. because of the instrumentation factor, once we know who those students are, then we can form some experiences around those groups. We'd hate to try and create a jazz experience if we find out that none of our drummers or piano players want to come into the building. So we're in that process. We've gotten a really positive response so far from students. So it's looking like we're going to do something, but what that something is, we just don't know yet. And in addition to that, in the classroom piece, those music groups are continuing to work on some music, and we're hoping to put out a few more virtual performances and recordings as well. Again, we've had a lot of success with those, so it's been exciting. And hopefully over time, we'll also be able to squeeze out another theater production in addition to YAMO. I know our dancers just finished a virtual performance 2 weeks ago as well. So hopefully, in time, we'll have a better sense of what we can execute, as well as get a sense of, where things are going with COVID to find out what our constraints are.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nick. You mentioned something that was really important, and I just want to lift it up as you were talking. We still have virtual experiences going on at the same time. So, again, just think about how flexible and on a dime we've been able to shift as an organization. And all of you on the call have done so much work in the past 2 weeks to get this off the ground. I really do appreciate it. But we're starting these in-person experiences, but we're not abandoning the virtual experiences for students as well. So if students don't feel comfortable or feel like it's not safe for them to engage in person, we're not excluding them. There's still opportunities available to them. And I think that's really important to keep in mind, that while we're trying to plan these in-person experiences, we have a parallel process going on where we're still planning and executing and supporting the virtual experience for our students. So when you were speaking, that really came up for me.
Well,
Nick,
Scott,
one more question. Yeah.
I would just offer, I think that same applies to staff as well. I know not all staff are in a position where they can come into the building, but providing virtual experiences is a way that they can also contribute toward this broader effort in a way that they feel comfortable too.
Absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that, Nick. So do you have any advice for staff who might be considering offering an in-person experience as you've been supporting people thinking through this?
Yeah, I think, credit to the student activities department. I think what they did really well, and I would encourage all staff to do, is to talk to kids. I think if we start planning things first with the hope that kids are going to come, we might set ourselves up for kind of a disappointing experience. So I think talking to kids, finding out what they're interested in doing, is just going to help give us a clearer idea of what will be successful, what they're willing to come into the building for. And that way it's a positive experience for everyone. I would also encourage staff to get into the building before their experience, get into their classroom. A lot of classrooms, haven't really been touched since March when we all left. I think there's still like a cup of coffee in my office just sitting on the desk. So I would encourage people come in, get a better sense of like what their room looks like now with some social distancing guidelines, just navigating the building so that when the day comes, you've already had that experience and none of that is new for you, because it's going to be new for the students and we're going to need to support them in that way. I would also encourage staff to talk to their colleagues. Nobody has to do this alone. And so that could be about partnering with somebody for an experience that might be able to offer more that way. It might just be able to do this with somebody, and sometimes that partnership can really help. And that also extends to everybody on this call, the IT team, if people have questions, if people need ways and ideas to make this go smoothly, I think there's a lot of support and ideas out there. So I would just encourage talking to colleagues. And I think lastly, just remembering the why that Nicole talked about. I'd encourage people to start small, build into experiences. We don't need to kind of hit a grand slam from day one. This is just my opinion. Because I think everybody's reacclimating to building, reacclimating to being with people. And that's gonna feel some kind of way for some folks. So I think just starting small and really remembering that this is really about social emotional well-being, being together and re-engaging with school in person and in the building. And there's a lot of different ways to do that.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Nick. That was fantastic advice. We should have recorded. Oh, wait, we did record that. We have that forever. So anyone who needs a little boost on thinking about this, we can play this recording for them. Awesome advice. Thank you so much.
It's
Nick.
almost like you sent us the questions in advance,
It's
and I have a
almost
whole
like you were
sheet of
prepared
notes
for
over
that,
here.
Yes. Appreciate your preparation. Dr. Brown, thank you again for being on the call. And we were talking about these in-person experiences and things that people can create. And I think David used the word design. I think you were thinking about designing experiences. But one of those experiences that I've been reading about and have seen in the emails is the Safe Center for Online Learning. And it seems like that has been established. And I'm just curious, what is it? Please tell us what the Safe Center for Online Learning, or the SCOLE as I've seen it written, is, and who it's designed to serve. Like, what's the goal there? What's the why behind the Safe Center for Online Learning?
All right, good morning. So the Safe Center for Online Learning is a designated and supervised space for students to remotely and virtually come into the building and engage in enhanced e-learning. So the SCOLE offers a quiet space with reliable internet, mostly, for students during live learning school hours. It's Tuesday through Friday, so there is no Monday, asynchronous days, but it's during the Tuesday through Fridays from 8 a.m. until the end of the school day. Students are able to voluntarily utilize this space. They have to maintain social distance. They have to adhere to all the other health and safety guidelines in place. But it is a space that will be supervised for students to sign up for and attend. They can either sign up for the remainder of the weeks in second semester, or they can register weekly as they know they'll be able to come into the building to participate. Staff members are also able to refer students. A referral from a staff member does not mean that the student will have to come into the building. They have to have that discussion with the family to see if that's something that the family is willing to do. But they are able to refer students to the SCOLE. And that registration form is on TAC as well as on the Academic Support's Google site.
Wonderful. So that last part there, you said, as a staff member, if I want to refer someone, if I'm in TAC or eSchool, like, it's the same thing as like a Lit Lab referral form or some of the other forms we have. There's a kind of a link there. I can access it through that platform.
Absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. As well as on the Academic Support's website.
Yes.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say there's a clear space there, Safe Center for Online Learning SCOLE, where they can just click and it'll give them access to the registration form.
Wonderful. So what, as I'm listening to you talk and thinking about this opportunity, great, I can refer, but can you talk a little bit about like why we're not just requiring students to come to this? Like, we all know there are kids who, are laying in bed or maybe not doing what they need to be doing at home, or maybe learning from their home is a challenge. We've heard this from our colleagues, and certainly some of us have witnessed this firsthand. So just curious, like, why aren't we like requiring kids we know who might need this support to come into the building to do it?
Well, we have to be considerate of students' circumstances. We aren't sure why students, aren't performing or aren't, participating, and just referring a student is a judgment. So we're trying to remove ourselves from placing those judgments on students and their families, and giving them the option to be able to come in if they are able to come in and experience this service themselves.
Awesome. Thank you so much. David, I'm going to come back to you with my last question here, and then I'm going to give everyone an opportunity. You don't have to, but if you'd like to leave any final thoughts. So David, as you were talking about signing up, and Nick referenced classrooms and getting back in and reacclimating myself into the building, I was thinking, before COVID-19 and before the pandemic, if I wanted to do something in my classroom or in my office space, or, I could just do it pretty much, right? I didn't really have to reserve my classroom as a space, or, sometimes I would just peer into A, 252 as, oh, it's free and I can, do my thing. Why can't we do that? Why can't we roll that way during this time with the in-person experiences? Can you speak a little bit about why we have to have the form in place and why we have to kind of reserve spaces as opposed to just use them ad hoc?
Absolutely. So yeah, so as we may know, that there are very specific guidelines as to capacities for the building and even down to the room. And we want to try to, again, anticipate as much as possible how many students, how many staff are coming into the building on a specific day, And that really speaks to the registration piece. So the two parts, like in that proposal form, the when and the where. And again, that's where Robbie's team and School Dude comes into play. So we know like these rooms are going to be used today. They're very specific capacities. And we know that the building, we are allowed to bring in X number of people depending on what tier and what phase we were in for the state that day. And so we need to keep that in mind in the planning phases. We also don't want people just ad hoc dropping in, because if I come into A252 and there's another teacher with their class coming to A252 without the reservation, we're going to have a problem, right? So we want to anticipate as much as possible that. We want to know who as well. So that's, again, why we have those ID numbers in place. We're asking for teachers to tell us who those IDs are, so that when the student comes in and when they scan in at the entrance, 1 or 2 or 3, safety will know, 1, whether they've completed their COVID screener, 2, whether they're registered for an experience. Are they supposed to be in the building? And then 3, whether they are on a quarantine list or something like that, where they've been identified or they've self-identified, something like that as well. So we want to have as much of that kind of in place as possible, so that teachers are not surprised, again, whether it's a student coming into the room or a teacher coming to a class that has been reserved or not been reserved for anyone else. So even though it may be your classroom, we need to know for the big picture, the umbrella picture of who's in the building that day and how many.
Thank you so much, David. And for anybody on the call who's thinking about doing this, I do also recommend that you look at the reopening page on our website. You look at the health and well-being safety guidelines. Under phase 4, where we're at right now in our area, there's certain restrictions that apply, but as you come into the building, you will see a very different physical ETHS with signage for walking in certain hallways for social distancing. You will see plexiglass in certain places. I mean, it's going to be a different experience. So to Nick's point, certainly being able to get back into the building to prepare yourself for what that's going to be like is super important. But all those health and safety guidelines are still in place so that we can provide the connectedness, but we can also do it safely. So encourage anybody who's considering this to review those. We haven't reviewed, we talked about doing in-person things early on in August and September, and then we've been remote for a very long time. And so those health and safety guidelines may have fallen off folks' radar. So if you want to check those out again, I would strongly encourage it. But any final thoughts from any of the panelists before we wrap up today's rundown?
I do have one thought or piece of advice based on something that I heard President Nick say. As he did suggest, it would be important for people to come back into the building and reacclimate themselves to it, and be able to extend some grace and anticipate a variety of emotions that may come up with seeing a space that they haven't been in almost a year. Carmia Beatty, our student rep, she is one of the students on the YAMA board, and at the board meeting on Monday night, she did say she shared her experience with coming back into the school, and it was a little anxiety provoking. So people should anticipate that for themselves, perhaps, and maybe for students, as excited as we are to be able to do these things. There's definitely a different feel, and I think just keeping that in mind and knowing that everybody's going to have a different entry point and a different experience with re-engaging, just allowing the space and the time to consider that that people are looking forward to it, and it may be a little stressful or anxiety provoking at the same time. So that's all.
Thank you for that, Nicole. Anybody else? Look like maybe you were about to speak, Dr. Brown?
How'd you pick up on that? It was very subtle. I did just want to say, I did want to reiterate what President and Assistant to the Director of Student Success Services, et cetera, stated earlier. But also, like, if you do feel like students would benefit from coming to the school, you can actually recommend that through your classroom sessions as to students as well, especially for students who may not have looked at the website or paid many attention to the communications that were sent out, and just encourage them to also participate in some of the in-person experiences as well through your classroom time with them. I think that a lot of students will actually love to have that personal invitation come from their teacher. So use this opportunity to also, just invite them into these various spaces.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. So you want to go, Nick, or no?
Yeah, I'll add one more thing.
Okay, wonderful.
I think what was also really highlighted is the importance of planning in this process. I know David talked about a number of things that happen behind the scenes and have to happen now as a result of, the circumstance that we're in. So just encouraging people to kind of look ahead in their calendar, plan with students, get the sign-up forms out there so that all the information can be submitted at the time that we need to make everything happen so everybody can have a positive experience.
All right, I'll jump in one more thing after CEO here. Just wanted to point out the technology that we sent information on, the workstations. Those are kind of being put into place. So you may, when you come into your room, to see a new table. You may see the plexiglass being installed from operations. Eddie and his crew are doing an amazing job of getting that in. And we are prioritizing those that put in the proposals and include that room number. Eddie and his team are kind of going to those rooms first. So hopefully you'll start seeing that. But again, patience. And if you do have any questions, as Nick said, do let us know and just ask, and we'll be happy to follow up with you.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. And just to close out, I wanted to just offer this thought. I've had the privilege of being able to work from home primarily throughout this entire experience. And that's not the case for everybody. And so, several of our colleagues' job responsibilities require them to be in the building. And so just as we're talking about some staff reacclimating, we also need to recognize that we have staff who have been here every day from the beginning. You can't run the building from home. You can't have custodial and engineering support from home necessarily. So we've had staff members, our colleagues, our friends, our family members in the building every day, all day, supporting the operation of our school district. And so I want to really give a shout out to them and really thank them and thank everybody. Everyone's been doing what they can and need to do to support our students in many different ways. But that's one of the ways that we don't often get to talk about. So thank you to all of them. And thank you to everybody who's considering doing this. It's not an easy decision. It's a little jarring as we've been experiencing this extended time in this pandemic. But there are so many people who are excited to do this and are willing to do it and want to get into it. And so I just thank everybody for that. I know our students are really going to appreciate that as they will continue to appreciate the things we're doing remotely for them. So thank you all for your time this morning.